All right, so this is week 4, and we're going to be talking about court databases and electronic filing platforms. Before we do so, I want to talk just a moment about some of the assignments I've seen and some of the grading I've done. I want to reiterate, as I have in other classes, that if you've had me, when you spell judgment, it does not have an E after the G. Judgment, Judgment. It is irregular, argument, management, all those other words have an E between the G and the MENT. Judgment, for whatever reason, has no E between the G and the M. Remember that. Edit your writing. There's a lot of wordiness, and if you're interested, I'd be happy to print off a paper and sort of redline it and give you my suggestions about how to write more concisely if you're interested in doing that. Otherwise, I'll just comment because the tools that I have for grading that are online are not good for editing and striking out and all that kind of stuff. But that's just a bonus if you're interested. All right, so let's talk about the actual topic for week 4. The principal databases for state and federal have both a read-only court record system and then a filing platform that is separate. You can understand why people would be interested in having an access that allows them to simply read documents, and then for attorneys, you would need something that would do that, plus you would need an extra platform for filing. So, in the state system, you have AliCourt, which is a database that has court records on them, state court records. I'll talk about what that means in a minute. And then you have AliFile, that is a means of electronic filing. Over in the federal system, you have something called PACER, Public Access to Computer Electronic Records, PACER. And then you have what is called CM, ECF, Case Management Electronic Case Filing. And they are the read-only in the case of PACER, and then the filing platform is CMECF. Two separate logins, again, there. Two separate things that you have to purchase or be registered for. All right, let's talk about AliCourt for a minute. As far as records are concerned, what is on AliCourt are state court records, that is circuit court and district court. And because AliCourt is a separate entity from the state, because it is a private vendor, some cities will contract with them as a means of court record storage and retrieval. And it's just random. For instance, the city of Athens uses them. No other city in North Alabama that I'm aware of does. The little town of Cherokee does, because I always get it confused with Cherokee, the city, and Cherokee County on the other side of the state, the extreme other side of the state. But anyway, so for practical purposes, AliCourt is where state court records are, circuit court and district court, not probate. And not municipal courts typically. So what I would say is a lot of interesting things, especially in city courts, will reside elsewhere from AliCourt. So for instance, if you're doing a criminal background check and you check circuit civil district, or rather circuit criminal, district criminal, you may not be getting the whole story, because there can be some fairly serious misdemeanors in municipal courts that are not there. There is a That would mean DUIs. That would mean, for instance, there's a sexual abuse second degree that's a misdemeanor. So there's some fairly significant crimes that would not appear routinely in a criminal background check if you were just simply searching Alicorp. Alicorp would contain state court records. The only traffic DUI stuff that you would see in the city or in a municipality is when that ticket is written by a trooper, in which case the case does not go to municipal court but goes to state court because those officers are state officers. So you won't see troopers in municipal court for that reason, because their cases are in district court. All right, so Alicorp allows for searching, and you can filter search results by jurisdiction. That is, you can filter by county, or you can search the entire state. If you have a fairly common name, that doesn't necessarily give the best results, but if you have a unique name, it would. And then there are all kinds of identifying information on Alicorp results that would help you narrow down if you happen to be dealing with a common name that returns a lot of results. You can search for particular kinds of cases within a jurisdiction, that is CV, CC, DC, DV, DR, CS, and TR. Then you can search for kinds of cases by means of searching civil only or criminal only. And of course, criminal would bring up CC, DC, and TR, which are traffic cases. Then you can search by not only name but date of birth, social security number, those sorts of things to get really particular kinds of results. Alicorp is not a free service. There is something called Just One Look or something like that, where if a pro se party gets electronic notice, they can look at and print the document. Pacer similarly has that in the federal system, but you can't retrieve it more than one time without paying a fee, as I understand it. So that is what is available in Alicorp. Very navigable, very useful, in that when I first started practicing, you had to go to the courthouse and access a terminal, and you had to search state by state or statewide, but now you can do it from the convenience of your office. One unintended consequence is Alicorp, again a private entity, will give a subscription to anyone who is willing to pay for it. So that is how the media follows cases and knows things that formerly someone had to get up, go to the courthouse, pull a file, and look at if they were writing a story about criminal cases. Because I do a lot of criminal work, I have to be very cautious about what I file online if I can avoid putting something dramatic out there. Sometimes there's no way around it. So the other feature that Alicorp has that's particularly useful to the media, that's what caused me to remember this, is you can follow cases. That is, if you're of record in a case, you get electronic notices from Alicorp, but you can pay Alicorp to give you notice of everything that's filed in a particular case. You can follow an attorney, cases that an attorney has filed, and you can certainly search by attorney. There are other things that you can search on AliCourt, like, for instance, there purports to be a warrant database. I wouldn't trust it because I have searched when I knew good and well that a person had a warrant and it wasn't on there. So I'm not exactly sure that that is a reliable database, but there are a few other miscellaneous things on AliCourt. Now let's switch to AliFile, which is the electronic filing platform for the state of Alabama. AliFile is where you file most everything in a state court case, and it there are specific things that you cannot file on AliFile, and not all the reasons are clear to me why. But when you log into AliFile, there is a message board. Today, for instance, there are things about COVID shutdowns, the fact that you can't file certain kinds of evictions now because of the state of emergency. Also on that message board is a list of the sort of things that you are not allowed to file on AliFile. And that's very important because it can mean that you've missed a deadline or failed to properly invoke the jurisdiction of the court if those things are filed electronically some way or another, if they are slipped in under the rug, so to speak. But then so that message board is there. I think it also has the requirements for redaction and concealing information from this public platform, because what you file on AliFile populates into AliCourt. And so the redaction requirement is fairly new. In other words, there was available this public court database, and people could get a subscription and have access to all kinds of sensitive information like dates of birth and social security numbers, particularly in domestic cases, because that I think it's a CS-42, for instance, has a child's social security number and dates of birth. The CS-43, I believe, has that information about parents. That's a deadly combination if you have both a birth date and a social security number. They went to redaction a few years back when they realized that AliCourt was a field ripe for harvesting identity theft enabling information. The names of minors, for instance, other things that this is one of the assignments that you have this week, is to look up those redaction requirements in state and federal court. But the statutory requirements and administrative requirements of redaction and concealment of information, those are contained on that message board. Anything else that is of significance or interest about goings on in the court are posted there. For instance, we mentioned the ban on evictions and foreclosures during the COVID state of emergency. There are also the orders of the Alabama Supreme Court about court closing, delays of jury trials, court procedures that have been posted since March there for review about the court plans and closings, reopening, and handling of particular matters during the COVID crisis. So that's the message board of AliCourt, or AliFile, so pay attention to that. So AliFile is where you file complaints, answers, motions, responses to motions. Orders are filed via AliFile. Proposed orders that a court asks counsel to draft are submitted there. other miscellaneous things like witness and exhibit lists, filings like that. Even ex parte motions can now be filed confidentially on Alifile, subject to the judge unsealing those filings. All right, so again, these are the use of Alifile is really a show to teach by showing and learn by watching sort of thing, but there are not owner's manuals, but user manuals and some videos that aren't particularly plentiful or in depth, but they'll help you get acquainted with Alifile before you show up for your first day at work. You'll know something about using Alifile. All right, so let's move to the federal system. PACER is a court database that is very similar in that you look up records of whatever kind, searching by case, by the kind of case, the last name of the party, the name of the business, that sort of thing. And you can retrieve documents that are filed, access information about court dates, and there'll be documents as well as docket entries. The most useful thing to access is the case history or history. I'm not sure the name of the link that you click, but it has all of the entries, which are sometimes docket entries of some importance, but they are not separate orders. But anytime there's a document of any kind, whether it be complaint, answer, motion, or otherwise, and orders that are written out, those are accessible just by clicking on that History and Documents tab. So those, the scope of what you can search on PACER is the one subscription allows for nationwide searches of all federal district courts and bankruptcy courts. So you can choose the Northern District of Alabama or any other federal district with one PACER login. So the other, the filing platform for federal court requires registration, obviously per district, because you have to be admitted to the bar of a particular district in order to practice there. A admission to the Northern District of Alabama will also allow you to practice in the bankruptcy courts. But incidentally, you have to get separately admitted to the 11th Circuit, which is the court with appellate jurisdiction for all the districts in Alabama, bankruptcy courts, and incidentally Florida and Georgia. Okay, so basically the information about filing is the same or similar, just a different vendor, different keystrokes. But you always file in the PDF file format in any of the electronic filing platforms. All right, so that is the federal and state trial court level filing and court records databases. The appellate courts don't have they're not tied in with Alicourt, some for reasons I'm not completely sure of why. But the appellate courts have their own electronic filing system. If you are registered with them, you can retrieve documents in any and all cases but you get electronic notices for only the cases you are of record, in which you're of record. So, again, similarly in the 11th Circuit, any other federal courts, you have a separate electronic filing system. So be aware of that. Probate courts are sort of a special entity in that they are not part of the unified judicial system. They're not part of the administrative office of courts, and they are really county by county courts that have some oversight and supervision from the circuit court and from even some assistance via the AOC, but they are not on our court. They don't, they're just their own little fiefdoms, really, for lack of a better term. So what that means is the electronic records vary from probate court to probate court. I'm sure there are counties that have no electronic records, where you have to go and physically take books off of a shelf, deed books, mortgage books, subdivision plats, probate court, court record minutes, and all that kind of stuff. Something I'm familiar with doing in the early days of my practice in the mid-90s. Then some counties, I'll give you for instance, Lawrence County, all their records are electronic, but you have to go to the courthouse and sit at a terminal to access them. By contrast, Morgan County, you can access the records electronically from wherever you log in. Madison County is similar, although their system is a lot less user-friendly. So I encourage you to go to the Morgan County system and just mill around and see how things can be done right. I don't know that you have to have a login to look at records. You may, and I don't think there's any charge for it if you do. So you might as well go ahead and establish a login if you're going to be a paralegal in North Alabama, especially if there's no cost. Look around there and see what's there. Probate courts are a major repository for information, deeds, mortgages, liens, election records, probate case records like wills, will administrations, and conservatorships, guardianships. Sometimes those, if there is a conservatorship or guardianship, you should be able to see it, but those documents may be protected from public view just because sometimes the sensitive nature of what's there. Another thing that the probate court does and has records of are adoptions, but those records are sealed. But just look at the databases you can locate online locally, and you'll see what I mean. You know, there's no uniformity, and it just depends on who does the best marketing to the particular probate judge. Now, so far as I know, none of the probate courts have electronic filing. Maybe Jefferson County. But in Morgan County, you have to mail or walk into the probate office and file things in person. Seems like an anachronism that's true, but it in fact is. Another thing that is out there, some courts will maintain their own databases, and part of your assignments this week deal with the one that the Madison County courts maintain for themselves or itself, the Madison County Circuit Court. And it is 23judicialcircuit.org. Lots of useful information there. In particular, there are standing orders of the court. There are orders dealing with standard visitation, the standard parenting clauses that are in domestic cases, pretrial orders, deadlines, disclosures, witness lists, all those things that are used in civil cases. How that's done in that jurisdiction is detailed by standing orders that are maintained on that database. I think they have court calendars where they have maybe dockets posted, but certainly what judges are handling what kind of cases on particular days. So look at that site. It's part of your assignment this week. If you don't have a freestanding court site like that, look at the circuit clerk's page, web page in a particular county. They may have the standing orders for criminal and civil trials and domestic relations matters, but that varies from county to county. It depends on how much the judges want to maintain control of court information and what their budgets are really in the state court system. One other sort of closing thought is be aware that there's tons of information available at state and federal agency sites. The legislature, for instance, Alabama legislature has a web site, the acrostic or acronym, whatever, is Allison, which I think is Alabama Legislative Information System online or whatever. But it has a copy of the code, it has administrative regulations, it has bills that are pre-filed every year for the legislative sessions, and it can tell you information about whether that bill has been advanced to out of committee, whether it's been voted on, amended, so forth, and certainly whether it passed and was signed by the governor. So it can be very useful. Similarly, the Secretary of State's website has a lot of legislative information. The Secretary of State in Alabama, their website and that office is a big repository of duties and therefore records. Businesses and corporations, some kinds of lien statements have to be filed on that statewide database. Election records, and then certainly since the Secretary of State is the official record keeper of the state, it has legislative history like I described earlier. But look at some of those databases like Department of Education, the Ethics Commission, DHR, Board of Pardons and Paroles. They'll have calendars about meetings, they'll have administrative regulations, they'll have standard operating procedures. The licensing boards all have their own websites. So look at those because they're often a real trove of information. So that will close out this initial lecture about court databases and filing platforms. If you have any questions or want to inquire further, you know how to find me. Y'all have a good week.